Hey, another Saturday night is upon us. So I only got one on here so far. This is killing me. Uh, I don't even know who it is because it doesn't tell me. Let's see. If you want to throw in the chat who you are, that would be wonderful. So that I know who I'm talking to at least tonight. I might give it a few more minutes. We'll see if we can get some people to pop on. It's getting a little late in the month, and everybody's busy. It's the holiday season, so give it a few more minutes. Oh. Well, there's bound to be more than one that's going to pop on here, hopefully. Can you hear me okay? Whomever you may be. Oh, there's two people now. Oh, it's Don. Hello. Hello, everyone, Don. Well, there's only three of us. Two. You, somebody else, and I. So, well, we'll see if anybody else pops on. So, hopefully everyone has been doing well. Oh, and Connie. So it's Connie and Don. So I guess I know both of you. So it just may be the three of us this evening. We will soon see. But you know what? I might as well. I don't know. Let's give it a second. You never know. Oh, now there's four. See, we just keep waiting. I keep complaining that no one's here before a few people will pop in. If you want to comment, Connie and Don have already commented to whom they are, then I know. I don't like this whole not knowing who people are. It's just a number. It gives me an eyeball with four. I don't know what that just says. There's four people. So I've got Don and Connie, which are regulars, we can say. Oh, and Courtney. Hello, Courtney. How are you? But so I've got two Iowa people and a Florida person, whatever they call you in Florida, Floridians or something, right? Iowans and Floridians this evening. Courtney has a fun job. I don't know, Courtney. You can comment if you want, but I don't know if you're still working for Disney as a photographer for a while, or I didn't know if that gig was up. I always get to see really cool stuff of yours. So, oh, hey, we have number 5. So who is number 5? So I've got Courtney, Dawn, and Connie. So that leaves us 3. So there's 2 more here, but we will get started here momentarily. I really shouldn't be drinking coffee this late in the evening, 8 o'clock. I've had way too much coffee working on my project today. I go to the coffee shop in Marion so much now they know. Oh, you're still at Disney until January. Good. I had way too much coffee to the point today where they know my name when I walk in at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. So we'll see. But you know what? Let's get started. There's 5 of us, so it's a lively little bunch tonight. I got my notes on my sticky pad. So, well, if you have questions, throw them up because I love questions and I always don't get to. Last couple things, nobody's had questions. So, I don't even know where I want to get started. I could talk about landscape photography for hours and hours, really. Well, let's start off. Well, if you want to get more into landscape photography with me, I think it's April is my first one, but it's all online through Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy out in Torrance, California. So I teach that's a 4-week class, and we go through a little bit of this, and well, we go through everything on this list pretty much, but in a lot more depth. And I give you assignments to come back and re-critique. So that's the other thing. If you guys are interested, I should have posted on my Facebook page the critique that I did with the advanced photo students. Sweet Jesus. With the advanced photo students out at Paul's and the Creative Photo Academy. So they worked on a 1-year project. I think there was 23 total projects. It's like 2 hours or 2.5 hours long. So you might have to watch it in little snippets. But I posted that up there. So it was really cool. We got to see projects from like food photography that was like called Any Way You Slice It. It was like really thin sliced fruit. And macro shots to like this Texarkana project to a hair salon project into this little, and then the last one was my favorite. It was a little house, well, I shouldn't say house, little community out in the desert. So it's super cool. So yeah, so if you're interested in that, I'll be doing, you can watch that. And then obviously, like I said, I think back April is my first, I teach that 4 times. So once a quarter. for Paul's photos. So we always do that. I teach intermediate, and I might be teaching a few more for them. So I just got to get my butt in gear. So you know what? Now there's 7. So let's roll. So let's see. And like I said, if you've got questions, please pop them up in the chat. Or well, it's my chat, but I see it as chat. But you guys will see it wherever your comment section. If you want to post there, it's a lot more interesting. I rather answer your guys' question than just drone on and on and on. I already talked a lot enough this week. I don't know if Peggy's on here this evening. She'll probably watch the rerun. But I got to speak to the Great River Camera Club in Muscatine on Thursday night. We went through building blocks of photography and kind of talking about mood and all this good stuff and lighting and fun. So let's get started. So let's talk about process. I don't care what type of photography you do, whether it's commercial work or landscapes or portraits, but process is such a big thing because I get a lot of people like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Well, first of all, you got to find your subject, and whatever made you stop, that's obviously your subject. But I think a lot of people struggle with that. And the other thing too is, I think when you create a process and you don't stray from the process unless you really have to, you end up getting to a point where you just know it and it doesn't delay you. So when you see that real sporadic thing pop up in front of you over here and you go to photograph it, you know what you're doing. My process, I mean, I could be forever talking about mine, but it's just really going through and thinking, most of my camera for general is set up, single autofocus point, matrix metering on the Nikon. Let me think, already set to RAW file format, things like that. But then, shutter speed is always ever changing, aperture is always ever changing, and so is your ISO. All 3 are ever changing, no matter what you do. For me, I always set shutter speed first, then I set aperture, then I set ISO. That's my process. I know when I get up, the first thing I do is like, okay, I'm shooting sports. Well, I'm going to set my shutter speed to something. Well, let's talk about landscape photography in that sense, not sports. But let's say I got a waterfall. I'm notorious that when I have a waterfall, I like to blur the water. I want to show action and motion. So I instinctively know by doing it 1.5 million times that I'm probably going to start out around 2 seconds. So I set my shutter speed for 2 seconds. Then I set my aperture to the depth of field I want. Do I want everything in focus, or I do want very little in focus? And then I obviously choosing where I'm going to focus. I usually focus roughly, about 1/3 to 2/3 of the way into the frame. And then I go from there. So I've already got my shutter speed set, my aperture set. And when I do that, it may be overexposed or underexposed, whatever it may be. Then I balance that with my ISO. So obviously, if I'm at ISO 100 already and I can't go any lower and it's overexposed by a stop or 2, my process then in my head, my little flow chart that I've got says, well, what can I do? I can't go any lower on ISO. I don't want to move my aperture from, let's say, f8 to, f16 to let in less light. Let's just say I want it locked in at that. And obviously, I can't go any faster shutter speed because I'm not going to get that nice, silky smooth water. So what happens? I have to find gear. Well, I know instinctively that I need to go to my neutral density filter, and I don't know, let's say it's 3 stops overexposed. Then I can pick a neutral density or my variable. And what I like to do is my variable spins. It's like a 2 stop to 10 stop. I'll just thread it onto the front of my lens, and then I whoop until my light meter kind of goes where I want. I have a tendency to slightly underexpose or slightly overexpose. So it just really kind of depends what I'm doing, or the mood, as we spoke about on Thursday night, what I want to portray in my photograph. And then obviously within that process, I've already got a tripod because I know I can't do 2, 3, 4 second long exposures handheld. I may have a polarizer on already to get glare off the rocks and the water. So I may not need a neutral density. So it's coming up with a process that works for you. I've got one client I worked with. They want to set aperture first. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you, because what's right for me is not right for you. And what works for you doesn't work for me. So sometimes it's playing for ages and ages and ages to come up with some type of process that you're going to find that's comfortable for you. And I find out when I screw up the most, it's because I didn't follow process. So if I'm always setting shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and for some ungodly reason I decide to do aperture first, well, then it throws me off. But most of the time I'm shutter speed, aperture, ISO. Now I'm not going to say that if I'm doing a macro shot, most important thing there for me is aperture. I need a lot of depth of field or very little depth of field. Then I'll probably set aperture first, but then I always go to shutter speed and then ISO. ISO is always last for me. It's just the way my old noggin works. So that's the process I've created. So you may have multiple processes within your photography, whether that's going to be, if you're doing food, I set everything. If I do a food shoot, I'll set my ISO really low. I'll set my shutter speed to where I want it to be. Obviously, I'm on a tripod, and I'll set my aperture for depth of field. If it's underexposed, I just use my flash and just increase my flash power till I get the exposure I want. That's how I do that. Same with products. If I'm looking at, I did some stuff for a client one time for protein powders and things like that. I set the mood first and on purpose underexposed by 2-ish stops. I wanted it to be dark. It was in a gym. He's got very dark product. It was very shiny bottles with matte labels. They were not fun. But then, and then I worked around that. So you're going to find processes within processes. But kind of back to the landscape thing, let's just kind of talk like essential gear in theory. I mean, you should really have a tripod. I am not a firm believer in needing to use the tripod for everything. Most landscape photographers are. I like to roughly just go on and handhold everything, unless I'm doing slow shutter speed work. To me, I'll tell you the good thing about the tripod is it will slow you down. You don't end up getting like squirrel brain and you're like, oh my God, photograph over here and then over here and then up here and then over here and down here. And then before you know, you're really not doing anything other than just randomly taking photos. So it does slow you down. It makes you think, especially if you're really going to compose an image. If I want to, I always should. And as I tell people, you should check the edges of your frame, make sure there's no sticks, sticking out, or, I don't know, a little stray piece of grass, because the less I have to do in Photoshop later, the better. But obviously you're going to need some type of tripod. Some people are dead set on using a shutter release. I don't, because I always forget them at home, or they're in one of these 10 bags here in the office on the floor kind of thing. So I use the self timer on the camera. All I want to do is I want to reduce any vibrations of slow shutter speeds in the camera. So if I go and hold the camera and click it, I might move it, things like that. If I'm using a shutter release, click, it does it for me. It's an instant shot. There's no delay. So you just want to get that little vibration out of the camera. For the most part, I just use the 10-second timer, set it, hit, let it beep, whatever. I'll ponder something for 10 seconds and then let it go. So if you got any questions, pop them up in the chat. I'm more than welcome to answer them. I always have filters. I mean, I think there's 3 types of filters in my bag. I have a Benro system that allows me to use the graduated filter, which is square. The reason I like that is you can get graduated filters that, so if you don't know what a graduated filter is, it's usually dark by a certain amount of stops and it fades like a gradient for the most part into clear or just glass. You can get them in acrylic and resin and glass. I like glass. Don't drop them, you'll break them. I've done it once or twice. But, it's one of those things that's where I can just expose my image the way I want it. Sky's overexposed. Instead of sitting here HDRing it, I think every photographer goes through the HDR phase of bracketing. And I don't like to mask and I don't like to do all that crap in Photoshop. Now that Lightroom makes it super easy, I will do it there. But for the most part, I can use the gradient, darken the sky. But what's cool about the squares, I shouldn't say they're square filters, they're more rectangular, is I can move them up and down. So there are some filters that are like your regular UV filters that thread in that have a gradient on them. The problem with that is you can't move it up and down. It's threaded. The only way is if you want to compose a shot a certain way and you need that filter to darken more, maybe even into the background or middle ground a little bit, you need to move that down. You can do that with that filter. The problem being is now you've completely changed your composition and you just have to choose what's more important. The other filters that there, well, let me go back. So on those gradient filters or your graduated filters, there's two types. There's a soft edge and a hard edge. So the hard edge, well, let's go back to soft edge. So the soft starts out at your dark and it fades into just nothing. It's clear at the bottom. And you've had that nice gradient. Now there's one called a hard edge, which it's literally like, if you look at it, it's the density you've got, let's say it's 3 stops dark, and there's a hard edge to it, and then it goes straight to clear. That's if you've got like a really hard horizon line, but 99% of the time, I think you're probably going to get into more of the graduated filters. So the other thing too is then that just ends up getting more gear because you have to have the holder and things like that. But they are nice to have versus having to do it in Photoshop or Lightroom later. No questions. Okay, so the next filter I usually probably use the most of is my polarizer. If you saw the video I shot early fall and said, hey, if you're out shooting fall photographs, make sure you're using your polarizer. I love the polarizer because it makes colors pop. It takes glare off of non-metallic reflections. So if you've got some like little shiny rocks because they're wet from water splatter on a waterfall, takes that glare off. It will take glare off the, if you've seen photos where they're like, you can see straight through the water, polarizer will do that. Spins it, takes that glare right off. Probably the most, I say, if you're going to have one. If you don't, that's the first filter I'd start with. It's going to be the most useful. Why sit in Lightroom or Photoshop and dink around with saturation and vibrance if you can just literally spin a filter just a smidge and poof, and it happens. Not saying you can't still go in and then, because you can have over polarization on a filter on your image from the polarizer. But at that point, polarizer is big. Neutral density. Well, let's go into neutral density. So neutral density is pretty much, you can, anytime you want to knock down light. So if you've got your image, it's too overexposed because you can only go so low on your ISO. Let's say you've maxed out your ISO. Let's say, I don't know, like I think my D850 goes to 25. I can't go any lower than 25. Let's say for some ungodly reason, I've set my aperture to f22. The tiniest little hole I can get in the lens, and I need that shutter speed of 2 seconds or 4 seconds or whatever it may be. Let's call it 2. At that point, there's nothing else I can do. I've got everything maxed out. So if I go any shorter of a shutter speed, then yeah, it's going to lighten up my image. But then the problem becomes, now I may not get the flow of the water, or whatever reason I'm using to slow down that the slow shutter speed for it. I'm probably trying to show action and motion at that point. So the neutral density threads on. There's two types. There's one called, well, just your standard one is, it's a set stop. I don't care for those because if I need, one's not going to work for everything. I might need a 2-stop, a 4-stop, an 8-stop, and a 10-stop. That's 4 filters. That's 4 times the weight. That's 4 times the money, really. I mean, and then the other problem I have with that is, I might have a 58 millimeter thread on the front of a lens and a 72 and a 77 and an 82. I think right now I've got 58, 72, 77, and 82. So I buy the biggest one that I can, which is the 82. And then you can get little step down rings that step it down to fit other smaller lenses. The other nice thing with the neutral densities in those is, they're fixed. They're not going to have, or I shouldn't say fixed, they're just a solid 2-stop. You don't usually have issues with those. I will say in filters, if you have a, say, $800 lens, 40, 50, maybe $100 filter is going to be fine. Or if you got, things like that, you don't need to go out and buy a $500 filter for an $80 lens. It's just kind of pointless, to be honest. But the better the filters, the better the glass, the clearer the glass, the better the coatings, all that good stuff. So, but just kind of make it reasonable. But don't go to Amazon. Please do not go to Amazon and buy a $15 filter. You're just then what you're gonna do is you're gonna hate it. You're gonna buy the $50 filter, and then you're gonna like it better, and then eventually buy the $100 or $200 filter that you want. And by the time you've bought all these filters over and over and over, guess what? You can just bought the one and been done. But the other one that you have issues, the big issue you run into with neutral densities is a color shift. mostly on the variables. So a variable might go from a 2-stop to a 10-stop. One thing I don't like about that is I don't know if it's a 2 stops or 5 stops or 8 stops or whatever, because it's not marked. It's got little tick marks, which make no freaking sense to me because it's got a thin little line, and as you get it darker, the lines thicken up. It makes no sense to me. It doesn't tell me, like, because if I'm looking at exposure and it says, oh, Justin, you're 3 stops overexposed. Well, okay, I need to compensate that with the neutral density of 3 stops darker on the filter. Well, it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't tell me where 3 stops is. Now, if I had a 3-stop neutral density, if that's what we're going to call it, on that, I can just dig through my pile of filters and say, oh, here's a 3-stop. Screw it on. A question. Let's pop it up here. So Courtney asks, what brand do you like for the filters? What brand? I'm kind of a Hoya person. Hoya. They are a good middle of the road filter. I have the ProMaster HGXs only because they're a higher end filter from ProMaster. They're made with German shot glass. They're super clear. Like when they're like brand new out of the package, you can close one eye, look through it, almost like feel like you're just gonna like put your finger through it because the glass is so clear. The other thing I like with those is they used to have an anti-static coating. Excuse me. And when I was at PhotoPro, one way I would sell them, and because it's God honest works, is you take a permanent marker. You could literally write on this filter with a permanent marker, blow on it, let it dry, a couple sprays of lens cleaner, and poof, it wipes off. You end up ruining your lens cloth, but guess what? It wipes right off. So I like those. They run a couple hundred-ish, but Hoya is a good one. I like Hoya. Breakthrough filters are supposed to be really nice. I have not tried those yet. And if you get into like the high end filters, I have to regurgitate this name now. What is it? Lee filters. There's like the Big Stopper and all these. They're expensive. I mean, they're like $400 or $500, I believe, on individual or kits of filters. So, but I think most people can start out with Hoya, Courtney, to be honest. You don't need to get into something, like if you're spending, I want to feel like a UV filter at one point, probably not today with the way things are rolling, but it used to be that a Hoya 58 millimeter, 52 millimeter UV was like $29.99, and it was a good high quality filter. The other thing in filters, you want to get multi-coated too. Hoya is mostly, I think, all multi-coated at this point. If you have old film filters, don't use those on your digitals because they're not as good as they used to be. But Hoya is a good one. ProMaster is a good one. Breakthrough is supposed to be good. If you really want to get into it, Lee. In between kind of Lee and your middle ground is B&W. So B plus W, Bravo plus whiskey. I've never been a fan of those. They're not bad. Don't get me wrong. They're not bad filters. I think they're a little overpriced for what they are, but that's my opinion. So I think Hoya is probably your best average filter overall for money and quality. So that was like a long thing. Oh, Ben. Ben asks, have you tried the new Z7 adapter ND filter? Sorry, I have my camera in front of the screen. I finally used them in Colorado and they worked really well for $40. Oh. No, I have not. I will have to look at that. I'm kind of, to be honest, I'm kicking around maybe getting rid of the Z camera. I don't know. Budget's the only thing. I might go to Sony. I don't know. But because of the lack of lenses. But I did find, oh, you're welcome, Courtney. But I did find out recently from the Rocky Mountain region, so I think that's all the west part of the U.S., including Hawaii. Their Tamron rep's awesome out there. Not saying our Midwest rep, Mike Pazendak, is not. Mike's awesome if you've ever met him. But the guy out in Washington actually posed, last time he was at Mike's camera in Colorado. He was talking about this new adapter that you can take any E-mount lens. So E-mount is Sony, and adapt it over to Nikon and have no issues. So it's like a $250 adapter. And I'm like, So because that's the problem. That's why I don't really. I pick up my 850 Ben over my Z6 too, because I don't have enough lenses, and I'm not giving Nikon 28 or $2,700 for a 70 to 200 at the point. And I don't love the adapters over from Nikkor. Well, Nikkor glass to the the FTZ mount. But I'm getting off topic. But so I am kicking around. I would love to get a hold of that adapter because it's like razor thin, and if it would, I could literally get all E-mount Sony lenses, mount them to the Nikon, and eventually, if I choose to move to Sony, now I have all E-mount lenses. So, long story short. But filters and all that good stuff. I mean, that's one of the big thing. I have neutral density, polarizer, and graduated or hard. I don't use the hard edges. I think I have one because it came in the kit. Benro used to make a really nice kit that came with a polarizer. That's the other thing I like with the square filters, the rectangle filters, is you can actually, into the holder, screw in a polarizer and a neutral density and use them all together. So, Ben says they saw that. Yeah, they made that new adapter official recently. Yes. So, yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully Tamron gets into the world of making lenses for Z mount. They have a 70 to 300, so it's a start, but I'm impatient. So I waited, I don't know how many years when the Z6 was out to wait and wait and wait. And the Z6 II came out. As I don't like first generation anything. I don't. I hate in that I shouldn't, even vehicles I don't like, but I did it on the new Nissan Frontier. And guess what? I got burned by a recall. It doesn't stay in parks sometimes. So now I'm waiting to get that fixed. But back to landscape photography. Let's kind of like talk about like types of like landscape photography in the sense of like images, or I don't want to say images, but like what do I want to call it? Like the grand scenic landscape, like the super wide angle. I think that's where we all want to shoot wide angle lenses, 17 to 50 or 24 or 14 or wider. Well, yeah, like 14 to 24 range, we'll say. That's that grand scenic landscape. That's where you're trying to get everything in. I'm actually going back more to telephoto stuff. Bringing everything in a lot closer, compressing the backgrounds down. I mean, 70 to 200 is always on the D850, always. And then my 24 to 70 f4 is on the Z6 II because that's the kit lens for it. But I have both those, and it, for the most part, covers my entire range that I usually photograph. The other thing, too, is I think I don't see a lot of people doing anymore is panos, so panoramics. Going into taking, I don't know, 8 or 9 images or whatever it may be, vertical format, and then stitching together. I think a lot of people these days just like crap because now that we have, I think Fuji released a new 100 megapixel medium format camera recently, and then they have like a smaller one. It's like 50. And I know Sony's are like 61 megapixels, and you got Nikons and all that good stuff. So everybody's going high megapixels. So a lot of people just kind of cheat and crap it. And it is a little easier, but I don't know. I think panos are kind of underrated these days. One thing that I was doing when I was speaking to critiquing the group at Paul's Photo for the advanced photo students on Tuesday night was infrared. 2 people did an infrared photography, and that was super cool. So I think that's coming back a little bit more. But you could use that in the world of landscape too, but that's a whole nother speak. The other thing when you're looking at your landscapes outside of that grand scenic landscape, that real wide shot, and your panos is, I don't see a lot of people doing more of those medium tight shots sometimes. So trying to if you're out, part of your process that I spoke on earlier is going into using working the scene too. I talked about that Thursday night with the photo club down in Muscatine. Was you got to work the scene. People forget that lenses come off. I can put different lenses on. I do that a lot too. I'll get stuck with a 24 to 70, and I'll I don't like this shot, and I'll be like, why? Why don't I not like it? Well, guess what? Usually it's because it's not close enough. And I just like wanted to like move on, and I was like, duh, just go get the 70 to 200. So getting those like nice medium shots, working the scene so you have a wide angle, you have a medium shot, you have a really tight shot, maybe a panoramic, so you have all four. And then you can work the scene, different angles, all that good stuff. And also working the scene, and this really is for any photography, is, you know, different focal lengths, different apertures, different shutter speeds. Like some people are like, oh, I got my exposure locked in. Let's not change anything. I think that's a big thing too, is just going in and remember that our lenses can come on and off the camera, and we can actually need to take a few steps to the right and the left every once in a while. So any other questions so far or comments? No? Oh, I'm trying to think what else. Well, let's talk about, like, I don't know, I don't want to call them types, but abstract versus like representational. I think as photographers and creativity, we have a tendency to think too much inside the box. We want to. I actually had a really good conversation through Facebook today with a good photographer friend. She's just bought the Tamron 70 to 200 2.8, and she was kind of like, "What do I use it for?" Somebody says it's only a portrait lens. I don't like to put lenses in boxes. So what I always tell people is, A, you can use a lens for whatever you want. Pick a lens that's going to give you the look. If you need a super bokeh background, then you're going to pick something like 2.8 or lower. If you've got a 1.2, maybe that's what you go to. You need to bring things in closer, pick the 70 to 200 or a 70 to 300. I don't know. Or if you've got a 200 to 500, pull that one out. How do I? Yes, I will talk Courtney after I'm done with this lens speak of how I create my abstracts. So I'll just pop that up there so I have it before I forget. But with the lens thing is like, I hate it when people put anything into a box. I tell people think like, everybody says think outside the box. I hate that too. I tell people to think like there is no box. Literally. This is 100% pure creativeness. Creative thing. So the only people you need to make happy with your photography is 3 people, me, myself, and I. Really. When I take a photo, if those 3 people are happy, then I'm happy, because guess what? It's all me. To be honest, because no one else really needs to care. Yes, Jan says like that, no box. I mean, it is. We sit here and drone on hours of YouTube video, and people are like, well, I'm so and so, and I'm going to say this is how you need to go and shoot this. It's a point. It's a starting point to yes, a starting point. That's what I want to say. It's not the only way. Every one of us, there's 6 of us on here right now. I could tell you all to go photograph the same freaking tree, and we'll all see it differently. We'll all choose different lenses. We'll all choose different angles. We'll all choose different perspectives. We'll all edit it differently post-process. So that's the awesome thing. So think like there is no box. Don't say that. Her friend said, well, that 70 to 200 is more of a portrait lens. Well, do I use it for portraits? All the time. That's probably the only thing that's on when I do portraits. Very rare. Or it's always on too for landscape photography. There's no reason you can't use it. Now, I'm going to say certain tools work for certain things much, much better. Like if I have a hammer and a nail, that's going to work a lot better. If I have a screw and a hammer, can I probably nail or bang that damn screw into a board? Yes. Is it going to work the best? No, but it'll probably work if I try hard enough. I'll probably break a few, but think of it that way. Their lenses have specific uses or things they are better for, things they are not better for. But don't say that the 24 to 70 is only for shooting wide angle. Who says you can't get 3 feet from your subject at 24 millimeters? It'll be very distorted, but guess what? There's no rule. It's all creativity. So, let's answer Courtney. So how do I do my abstract landscape? So you're probably talking about my ICM stuff, my intentional camera movement. Or if I do an abstract, I will do an out of focus technique too. So it's really not a lot of like, what do I say? Craziness. It isn't. So I'll kind of go through the journey where I started on that. So I started that whole abstract thing on a tripod with a fluid video head because I wanted smooth movement. I didn't like it where it kind of got off kilter. I have a problem with, like, when I get set to something, I just roll with it. Um, or I have preconceived notions. My wife tells me I need to stop setting myself up where I think it's going to be an exactly like when I went to Zion, or like let's use Glacier for an example, that it's going to be pretty all day long and it's not going to rain. And I don't care. It says 80% chance rain, but guess what? It's not going to rain. And guess what? It rained. And then I get all bummed out. But guess what? I do need to work on that. So I did that with my whole abstract thing. I thought, oh, it's going to work. But it was a process that I had to create. It was a process, a very big learning process, to just kind of come up and think differently on how I'm going to shoot these. So I had to go back and think of, okay, I didn't like, at first I thought tripod with a fluid video head. Why? Well, a fluid video head is obviously when you're doing video, it's fluid. It's very smooth. If I pan from the bottom up into a transition for a video or a left to right, it's smooth. Nobody wants jerky, shaky video. So these are nice, super fluid heads. But then I realized I'm stuck to two movements, up and down, left and right. Well, at first that was fine. But then I was looking at all these images and I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus, they're all the same. So then I had to think, okay, now what do I do? So then it came to, let's ditch the tripod and the fluid video head. So I ditched those, killed them off. I don't even use them. The only thing I use the video head for now is right now. It's sitting here on with the Z6 II to stream. But then I thought going through, I started looking at different, well, I actually was trying to figure out like abstract photography. And then I found this thing called ICM, which is I was doing intentional camera movement. So then I started noticing there's like people got all these little wavy motions. And then I got thinking, I was like, okay. Then I started to notice like what happens if I move with the landscape. So if I've got rolling hills, instead of going straight up, straight down, right to left, why can't I go if my hills flow this way? Why can't I do that? So I got that, but then they were looking like they were just stupid screw ups. Like, oh, you didn't use a fast enough shutter speed. Like I could still tell it was a landscape image. So then I had to think of, okay, what's going to do this? So then I was using 24 to 70 a lot. And then I was like, ooh, 70 to 200. Because I know that if I'm at 200 millimeters and I have a slower shutter speed, it accentuates it a lot more. So I was like 70 to 200. So I usually shoot it at 200 millimeters. I like to shoot about f4 to f8 just because that's where I'm happy at. Not saying I can't go to f22. Then I like to be about a fourth of a second. That's my starting point. And then I use my neutral density filter with the lowest ISO because usually I'm out on a bright day. That's what I love about the abstract thing is it does not, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter about light because that's the other thing I learned with my abstracts. I just thought, you whip the camera in whatever direction, you'll get something, which you do. But then I started to notice and thought about it. Everything in your typical landscape photography still applies to the ICM stuff. Contrast, color, shape, things like that. So then I noticed, like, okay, all those are playing a role. So then I built this little process through, and then I started like, yeah, I still go out early mornings and late afternoons. I'll go, I'll look at color in the scene. And I got the hard part is if you think it's hard to visualize black and white, it's really hard to visualize ICM because you got to see how everything's going to blend and mesh together. I will get your question next, Connie, about the pre-planning thing. So I like to do about a fourth of a second ISO, low as you can get it. My camera would be 25 or 51 of the two. I don't even know, with low one, whatever that is. And then shutter speed, the fourth of a second aperture, f4 to f8. And then I kind of play with it there. So I set those three settings. And if it's overexposed, then what I will do is I'll just crank my ND filter down and get it where I want. And then it's all experimentation from there. It's looking at the field or whatever I'm photographing or trees. Like if I started to do it, like if the trees are here on the horizon, I do the bottom up movement. The other thing that you're going to have to figure out too is speed. This speed and that speed are going to give you two completely different images. If you go too slow, it doesn't blend and mesh well together. If you go too fast, sometimes things blend a little too much. So it's a lot of playing around. Kind of in a nutshell, I actually taught a class on ICM. When was it? During the pandemic. I did a free webinar on one weekend. I should do that again. I should do it free or charge. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But, if you got any more further questions, Courtney, you know where to find me. Just shoot me a message or we can set up a phone call too. I'm more than welcome to do that. So Connie has a wonderful question. It says, are your landscapes more often planned or wandering the countryside to find a subject? Oh, yes, Jan, I forgot you took that class. So Connie, it's well, I want to say it's 50-50. It's about 90-10, in a sense. I find when I set myself inside that box that I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to this location and I'm going to photograph this exact thing, I lose my creativity. It's putting myself in that too much of a box. So the 90% of it is I wander the countryside. I really do. I get in the truck and I go and I just drive. On average, like 200, 250 miles at a time. And I just go. I pick east, west. I don't know how I did it one day, but I went north of Cedar Rapids and ended up in Iowa City. So, I just drive around. Now, most of that's not planned. I take my gear. I will plan maybe it's kind of poopy out, so I'll do ICM. But that's about as much as the planning gets for my 90% of my work. Now, the 10% of my work is like, let's say when I went to Glacier, I did plan. I knew where we would be on what days, how long we were going to be where, and how long. So then I did a little bit of research and said, okay, what's in? We actually got super lucky to stay on Lake McDonald, which is super awesome. So for me, I knew I was like 75 feet, 100, well, probably more than that from the edge of the lake, but still, I could get up in the morning at 5, grab the camera gear, just go sit by the lake for a while and look and watch and get inspired, I guess. And then I went over to the little shop, got some coffee, and then I wandered around and just photographed things. I went to the same spot every morning kind of thing. Then I did especially for like the trails. Like I had done a little bit of research of where I wanted to hike. Now with that, you got to have plan B. Because when I got there, I done all the research to when going to the Sun Road was going to open. I heard middle of June. I heard the latest it's been is mid-July. This year it wasn't until mid-July, beginning of July, because 2 weeks prior to my arrival, there was about 2 feet of snow in high elevation. My luck. So I only could go 17 miles up the road on both sides, which is literally nothing. So then I ended up planning, okay, we ended up going to a couple of the trails. Then that's when Yellowstone got flooded and all the roads got washed out. So Glacier had tons of rain. They had a lot of trails that were closed. Then we had some ridiculous campers that couldn't follow the freaking rules, and they're feeding bears. So guess what? The other place I wanted to go was too bear infested, so they said nobody could go up there. So I couldn't do that. So I had to literally have like 3 plans. So I do plan a little bit, like locations, thing like that. I do plan gear. I have a checklist that I went through 3 or 4 times. Like I have my basic landscape kit, but then I'm not taking flash or things like that. But I'm always going to have the macro lens. I'll take every lens I have, things like that. So there is some basic planning. When I went to Zion, that was a little harder to plan. That was not a week-long trip. That was Saturday through Monday. We left Friday. We flew into Vegas. Got the hell out of Vegas real quick. I despise that city. So I've only been there once. That was when we flew into Zion. And then we drove up and we stayed at the hotel. We were at Zion Saturday, Sunday, and I flew back Monday. And that was harder to plan because it was actually probably the easiest of the trips I've done to plan, because all I had to do is find a parking spot, and the rest was on the park. You take the trams through the park. It was super easy. I didn't have to fight for parking all day. I didn't have to get there at the crack of dawn, which I did still, because you have to, or you won't get a parking spot. But the hard part was I had to fly. I'm used to driving. We went to Glacier, we drove. So at that level, it's like, what do you take? I had to have my backpack, my or my Mind Shift Rotation 180. That's an awesome bag where I can hike, have my gear in the fanny pack in the back. It's what it is, and it comes out in front of me, so I don't have to take off the pack. That I flew with. That was all my clothes. When I got to the hotel, I threw it in the drawers in the hotel, and then I packed all my gear. I carried my camera gear onto the plane because I'm not checking it in. So I managed to fit my D850 with a battery grip and an L bracket and the Z6 II. I took the FTZ adapter, and the only three lenses I took was a 100 millimeter macro, 24 to 70 f4, and a 70 to 200 2.8. Those covered 99% of what I needed. I don't think I really ran. I did not take a tripod. I did not because I couldn't fit it in the bag. I didn't have time to buy a travel tripod that was small and that kind of stuff. So I ended up doing some slow shutter speed work in the Narrows handheld, which is stupid crazy. And the only reason I did that was because the Z6 II has crazy image stabilization built in. So it helped. So it's things like that. I do plan to a point, but it's okay to plan. Just don't get so hooked up on your plan. So because things changed. Like when I got to Glacier, it rained and rained and rained the first day. I wanted to just like go back, and then I thought, no, sometimes the best photographs for landscapes are made in the worst weather or after the worst weather. I don't know if you go back on my Facebook page, probably to when was that? Probably, I think it was this summer. I think it was this summer or early spring. Yeah, it would have been July because I was back home. I have a picture of the co-op, local co-op with this nice like cotton candy clouds and color. That was after a thunderstorm. So when I was at Glacier, it was total crap, downpour rain. I literally had a like garbage bag for rain gear on my camera, and I had to go buy a raincoat because I didn't get one before I went. And at the local shop kind of thing. So it was one of those things where I wanted to go back and say, you know what, let's just call it a loss and be done. But we drove in the rain around the park just to kind of get our bearings for the next couple of days. So once I get to a park sometimes, I may not even have my camera out, but we're just driving to see. Or we'll drive by and like, oh, we're gonna go there on Wednesday. Wow, that's only got 4 parking spots. I better get there early or go later in the day. I will tell you, at national parks, people are lazy, lazy, lazy. They don't want to get up before dark or before sunrise. The only people that get up before that is hikers and photographers. So for me, when we did Zion, we got to, I can't think of the trail name, super easy trail. But there was only about 8 parking spots there. We left early, and there was 4 parking spots left. So there's already 4 people there. This was like 40 minutes before sunrise. We went a quarter of a mile up the road, drove back a quarter of a mile, and we got the last one. So it goes quick. But that I planned. Then we hiked out to the end of the trail. So if you've seen the photo I have of the TikTok and I think the Instagram reel where I pan up and you see over this crazy valley and this like huge drop off, that was that trail. So that's one of those things like I do some planning. So that's kind of the long answer. Oh wow, time is just flying. Any other questions? I love answering questions more than anything. That's the other thing. Comment if you're interested. So I'd like to do one night maybe in December that's all totally a Q&A. Like guys bring your cameras. The other thing, or cameras, sweet Jesus, questions and email them to me ahead of time or send them over in the comments and I'll answer them. The other thing I thought about doing is a critique. If you're interested in that, let me know. Where you could email me like 1 or 2 photos, I'll throw them into a slideshow, and then I'll just critique them live. It keeps me sharp on critiquing, and it gives you guys some feedback. So Courtney says, does the ND filter have marks for stopping down one stop at a time? If you buy just say a 5 stop or a 10 stop, it doesn't. It's just it has markings that and that's the other thing I don't like about ND filters is they don't say 3 stops or 8 stops or 10 stops. They go by 0.8, 0.3. So you have to figure that out, memorize in your head. The variables do not. There are marks on the variable that you can spin, but like I said, it's totally useless. It goes from little to more of this, the one that I have. Um, oh, the other thing I forgot to mention about ND filters. On the variables where you can go, like you can see through it all the way to like so black that you can barely see through it, get like a decent one of those. Like the one I spent was almost $300 because when you get a cheap one, there's two things happen. Major color shift. They go blue or purplish. They're like a cooler tone. So you will have to pretty much shoot raw or you just fight Lightroom and Photoshop to correct your color back to normal. The other thing I hate, it bands like crazy on some of them. And banding is when you spin them or you spin it, it starts to get these overlapping, they look like backward C's and they kind of cross over and it's like light and dark. It looks patchy and they suck, to be honest. So don't get a cheap one. But yeah, I mean, there are some like a very, I wish I I don't have just a straight solid, I got rid of those like 3-stop because I'd show you there's no markings. It will just state. It will state though it's this like a 0.3 or whatever they call it. So then you can see. It's not like you're going to have to be like, well, that one's really dark. So is that 10 stops? And is this a 5? And is this a 3? So, yeah, good questions. I'm loving people's questions. Oh, Connie says a critique sounds interesting. Yeah, I think that would be fun. So I think there's, 10 on here now. So if for some reason you guys didn't catch it early on, I did a critique for Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy for the advanced photo students. That's actually posted up on my Facebook page. It was a Zoom. It's 2.5 hours long. So grab a coffee or a whiskey or whatever you want and sit down and have some fun and listen. It was myself and Libby. Libby was another photographer out of California. So that was actually a really cool thing. I was actually pretty honored to be asked to do that. So, but any other questions on landscape photography? I kind of went through my list, but like I said, I enjoy a lot more answering questions that people have. Because there are no dumb questions whatsoever. There is not. Somebody's bound to have something brewing up in their noggin. Come on, I know you do. I actually had a really interesting question that has not escaped my mind all week since I was down in Muscatine. A guy asked me, "How do I get creative? Or how did I become so creative?" I haven't gotten one of those questions in a long time where I'm like, but that was an interesting question. That one has not left my mind since Thursday. I give a horrible answer, but to me, it just comes naturally for me. But I just see things in a certain way, and that's things. I think there's natural abilities in photography and painting, and then there's learned abilities. But that could be a whole nother evening, but I won't get into that. Any questions at all? None? Come on, there's 10 of you on here. Somebody's bound to have a question. Trying to think of something else I can talk about. Oh, like out of all the national parks I've been to, if you're looking to plan some trips, photography brain, as I call it, yes. Do you have oh, yeah, bro. Let's pop it up. Courtney, you should come every Saturday night. Do you have a favorite time of day for landscapes, golden hour, etc.? I am a morning person now more than ever. Monday through Sunday, I'm up at 5:30 every morning. Um, I don't sleep in. Sleeping in is like 6 to me. So I like the early mornings, especially in national parks, because I said people are lazy, 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 and they won't get up, and I don't have to fight crowds, or late in the day. Those are the best times, just due to the fact I don't have to fight sun. I'm usually like 5 to, depending on the time of year, 5 a.m. to 10. I skip out from like 10 to 3, depending on the year. Unless, but I'm not going to say that you shouldn't shoot between 10 and 3. If you can find a way to use like harsh, hard light and make it interesting, go for it. But usually early morning, late evening, if I'm at national parks, always early morning. That always wins because there's only a few of us that are out there. Or later in the evening because people go and they get tired. So they're already sleeping in until 10 or 11. And then they get out in the hottest part of the day and they get tired. And then they turn around and 3, 4 o'clock, they're out of the park. And then that kind of thing. But no, I would say probably that 5 to 10 a.m. and that 3-ish to sunset. And then guess what? We don't have to start up at sunset after photography. Or as photographers, we can go into night photography and go on from there. So if you really think about it, you can shoot almost any time of the day. There are times I will go out in the morning. I will come back to the afternoon, work on some business stuff, and then I'll shoot back out for the evening. Um, let's see. I'll hide this real quick. Oh, Mary says I hopped on late. Very hard to hear. Interesting. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I think I turned on my mic. I really enjoyed it. I had a great thing. Thank you. So let's talk about my favorite national parks. This is just all based off my opinion. So if you're looking for some parks, I loved Glacier. I didn't get to see Glacier as much. Zion is awesome. It's hot. It's hot, but it was good. That was a park, Courtney, where we went like 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then went back to the hotel room during the hottest part of the day and had lunch and did some shopping and then came back in the evening to the park. That was like the perfect example of that. My least favorite park is Yellowstone. Somebody's probably going to throw me over a cliff for that. I hate Yellowstone, to be honest. It does not inspire me, but that's me. If it was me, I'm always gone in the summer. I know Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy is taking an adventure out there in the winter. That I will attempt. It'll be cold, but that I would love to do. Zion, probably my favorite is Smoky Mountains down in Tennessee, Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Depending on how my work Christmas time goes, I may hop on to Great Sand Dunes in Colorado and Mesa Verde this summer. Oh, Ben says Yosemite is removing their timed permit next year. I'm thinking Firefall in February. I will tell you, Ben, teaching and working with a lot of people out of California. I actually posted that I really want to go to Yosemite. That's on my list. And they were like, go in the off season. So I think February, good sir, is a perfect time. So I would think the other one I really want to go to is obviously Yosemite Redwoods. That's on my list. I really want to go to Death Valley. Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy is going out to Death Valley in February. I even thought about if I have to take time off of work if we close over the Christmas season, between Christmas and New Year's, I thought maybe about hopping on a plane and flying out to Death Valley by myself. But it's too short of a time and things are expensive. Jan says Great Sand Dunes was a cool park, very interesting shapes and abstract. See, that's the thing. That's what I really want to photograph is all the sand. Death Valley is on my list. Joshua Tree is on my list. I will tell you, if you want to go to a lot of parks, like in a real great vicinity, fly from Cedar Rapids to Allegiant to Vegas, and there is a plethora of parks within a 4-hour drive. I think Death Valley's like a couple hours. Joshua Tree's on my list. What else? Love Redwoods and Yosemite is on the list. I'd like to go to White Sand Dunes National Park. That's down, I think, in New Mexico. I know if I fly into not Fort Worth, but El Paso, I can fly into El Paso and then drive. It's like 4 hours. So, Don says, have a great night and a great week. Yes. Oh, we'll see you all Saturday. Happy shooting. Yes. So I am over. Well, no, we got 10 more minutes. So let's keep talking. Any other questions? Jan went to a whole bunch of places this fall. I just met her last weekend at a photo get together with some other photographer friends. Drive the truck and go through. I need to drive the truck, but I lease the truck at the moment and I put way too many miles. I should just rent a truck. But that's one thing I'd love to do. I would love to just get in a vehicle. And someday when I'm at the company, hopefully for 10 years and I have oodles of PTO, I would love to take 2 straight weeks off and just go. Just hop from wherever the world takes me. I need to be more free and open with things like that. Any other questions or things before we kind of wrap things up? No? Oh, come on. One more question. I'll take one more question. I want to answer one more question before we leave. If not, we'll call it a night. But Um, Jan says, I love that kind of trip. Just drive. Yes, yes, you do that all the time, Jan, and it's super exciting. I wish I could do that. But oh, podcast. Let's talk podcast real quick. So I got 3 episodes of the podcast up, nextshoppodcast.com. And then I'm going to record and edit another podcast tomorrow. I don't know what it's going to be about. I don't. I've got some ideas. So we'll see what it is on Monday at 5 a.m. when it pops. Pops up. Cottywomple or Womp. Yeah, Womple. I can't read from here with my glasses. I love that word. I probably mispronounced it, but that was I was trying to find a little bit ago, Connie. But no, yeah. So the podcast will be up. Oh, I will. So, other thing. No, no show next week because it's Thanksgiving and I should probably take a break because I've been running myself ragged since October, on everything. So no show next week. I don't want to say I'm running out of ideas for the Saturday night show, but I want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. I've got questions about. So Justin at tedfordphoto.com, email me ideas, whatever you want to do. I want to like it. This is for you guys, not for me. I just enjoy doing it. So, January. Let's talk January real quick because that's going to be here before we know it. Second Saturday, Stillwater Coffee in Hiawatha from, I think I got it set 9 to 11. We're going to do coffee and clicks. If you're not in the Facebook group connected to my Facebook page, let me know. Send me a message and I'll invite you. It's probably hidden. I may have invited half of you already. And if you don't, let me know. I'll invite you. So we're just going to talk photography. We're just going to sit around, drink coffee, and eat pastries, hang out, and talk photo stuff. So, but other than that, if nobody's got a question, we're going to wrap this puppy up. Geez, I've been doing this since August already. It's crazy where the time has gone. So hopefully, check out the podcast, kind of see what's going on. You never know what I'm posting these days. I don't know. I don't post much on Instagram anymore. I do some reels. TikTok, I'm on TikTok. I don't do that very much, but that's kind of fun. But follow me wherever you can follow me. Got questions, Justin at tedfordphoto.com. If you want to do a podcast idea, email me there or head on over to nextshoppodcast.com. There's a little mic. What I really would love to do is answer your questions on an episode of The Next Shot. So you can click a little microphone and leave questions there on anything photography, and I'll go through each one. And let's see. So yeah, everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving. That's already here upon us. And, take some time, go out, take some photos, whether it's landscape stuff or whatever you love, your passion. So awesome. So we're going to wrap this puppy up. So again, as always, I thank you guys for your support. It means a lot to see 9-10 people that you guys take your Saturday nights out to come listen to me drone on. Oh, you are welcome. Thank you, Courtney. Hopefully you can hop on some more. I've never met Courtney in person. It's always been a Facebook friend thing. So, yes, happy Thanksgiving to you too, Jan. So awesome. Like I said, thanks for the support. I guess in the month of Thanksgiving and being thankful, it's amazing how everybody supports me. So, yes, you too, Connie. We'll have some fun, and I think we'll do 3 shows in December because we'll cut off for Christmas. So, again, thank you guys very much. Have a good evening. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you in 2 weeks.